Mobile. I'm the Chief of Contingency Planning and Force Readiness. I'm going to MC this area contingency plan meeting today. And I don't have a published agenda, but let me just tell you how it's going to flow. I'm going to do a few introductions. I'm going to ask a few people to stand up and say what agency they're from. Captain's going to do some opening remarks. Captain Donald Rose, the Federal On-Scene Coordinator from Sector Mobile. Then Lieutenant Ashley Barihad is going to do a little PowerPoint presentation. I want to have a forum of the state OSCs, any EMA managers. I don't see John here. There may be some for some other comments that I don't recognize. And I'm going to ask them to come on up, and then we're going to open it up to the forum for comments. Captain doesn't like me to say questions and answers, but it kind of migrates in that direction. I see Tricia nodding her head over there. I know she's got some comments that may migrate over to questions and answers, and I promised her that we try and give her the best answers that we can. So with that said, the first thing I want to do is, I don't know the new mayor of Pensacola. I really don't even know. I voted in the election. Is the mayor here? Not here. Okay, thank you. Okay. Okay. Do we have any federal partners in here at all? Any U.S. Fish and Wildlife folks? FEMA folks? Any federal partners in here? Yes, ma'am. Would you please stand up and tell who you are and what agency you're with?
Sure. Amy Voorhees with NOAA's New Disaster Response Center out of Mobile, Alabama.
Well, that's wonderful. Are you substituting for Charlie Henry?
I am, yes, sir.
Well, you know, with that said, I'm going to ask you to come up front, okay? Because I promised Tricia that if Charlie Henry was here, we'd fire some questions in because he's a personal friend of mine.
Keep in mind this is week number 2 on the job, so.
Okay. 2 weeks on the job.
That's right.
That's called baptism under fire, dear. Okay. All right, so that's wonderful. So we got Noah here. Didn't have Noah in our other meeting, so that's great. Had FEMA, but FEMA's no substitute for Noah, right?
That's right.
Okay. Any other federal partners in here? No. Okay, great. Okay. I usually do that later. Any elected officials in here that I'm not aware of? Elected officials? Yes, sir.
I'm representing Congressman Jeff Miller's office. My name is Clark Merritt.
Well, thanks for coming, Clark, but I'm not asking you to come up front and get fired. Okay. Okay. How about state OSCs besides David? Any other state OSCs in here? Doesn't matter what state. Any state OSCs in here? No. Okay, wonderful. EMA directors. Any EMA directors? You're front and center. Throwing you up front and center. Okay.
I'm also the Sheriff Rifle Center.
Okay, sir. Please state your name.
Brad Baker, and I am the Deputy Sheriff.
That's fine, Brad. I'm asking you to come up front and center. We have a pretty good panel here today, folks. Any tribal partners? Anybody from any tribes here? Okay, no tribes. Haven't any tribal partners anywhere. How about any SHPLOs? Any state historical preservation officers or representatives here? Anybody from historical preservation? No. Okay, fine. Okay, with that said, Captain, if you'll come up and do some opening comments for me, please.
Sure, Carl. Thank you. Carl's going to make this interesting and entertaining. Carl works at Coast Guard Sector Mobile, which is where I work. I'm the sector commander. Coast Guard Sector Mobile encompasses the coast of Mississippi, Alabama, and the Florida Panhandle to the Xfinity River to the east. As the Coast Guard Sector Commander, I'm responsible for all the Coast Guard missions in the coastal zone, law enforcement, search and rescue, and pollution response. In the context of pollution response, the national government has created, and we're going to have a presentation with a little bit more detail, but has created a system to respond to the release of oil and hazardous substances into the environment. And the Coast Guard shares the lead responsibility with the Environmental Protection Agency for implementing statutes that govern pollution response. The Coast Guard and EPA, under the federal law and the Federal Code of Federal Regulations, has pre-designated federal on-scene coordinators to lead the federal response to incidents that have released oil or hazardous materials into the environment. And each of us is required in our area, a regulation. For the Coast Guard, those pre-designated federal on-scene coordinators are sector commanders like me. There's 35 sectors around the coastal United States. My sector is one of those 35. In that sector, for pollution incidents on the water, I'm the pre-designated federal on-scene coordinator, and as such, I'm required to have a plan on how I'm going to lead the response into pollution incidents. And that's what this meeting is about, is that plan. It's called the Area Contingency Plan. It's put together by stakeholders, responders, public that live in that area to help put together the plan. The plan is tested very often and used very often. In fact, we just had a fairly large spill on the Mobile River last week, and a lot of those partners that were involved in the plan and are designated in the plan are involved in responding to that spill. We are all required to maintain readiness plans for a lot of things. The anniversary of 9/11 is coming up. A lot of us are involved in putting plans together on how we deal with a terrorist event. We have plans for fire, flooding, hurricanes, right? We have plans for everything. Sometimes it's hard to keep track of all the plans we have. This plan received a lot of attention because of a big spill you may have heard about last summer involving the Deepwater Horizon drill ship, the Macondo 252 well, and the spill that came in. We learned and are learning a lot of lessons about spill response and how we should plan for it and how we should react to spills that we have been tasked to incorporate into our area contingency plans. Commandant of the Coast Guard chaired a lessons learned committee. It's called an incident-specific preparedness review that put some lessons before him, and he said, hey, there's some lessons here I want you as sector commanders to figure out and implement into your plans. Specifically, a couple of them, he said, I want you to do it by the end of the calendar year. Okay? One of them, one of the big ones, and one of the types of things we're looking at updating in the plan is the types of scenarios we plan for. The coastal zone areas didn't incorporate into their plans traditionally. They may have done it by inference or in abstract ways, but did not specifically encompass into their plans in a organized, coherent way offshore drilling rig disasters, because many of them are many miles offshore, and we shared that regulatory authority for those with another federal agency. It's very complicated, and the Commandant said, look, we need a consistent, comprehensive way for those type of rig incidents in the Outer Continental Shelf to be incorporated into the Area Contingency Plan. Carl's been on a study team in the Coast Guard, worked with what used to be MMS, is now BOEMER, Bureau of Ocean Energy Management.
Something like that.
Yeah. And working through how we take the information about those rigs and the worst possible discharges that could happen from those rigs and how you incorporate that into a plan. Resources, maximum discharge that's going to happen, what type of agencies would be engaged in those. That's a deliverable we got to do. So Carl and I said, look, we got to update this ACP anyway. There's a lot of lessons. A lot of people were paying attention to oil spill response. A lot of people got smart. A lot of people thought we got smart. Maybe aren't so smart. A lot of politics were involved in how the spill was responded to. Learned some great lessons. Learned some great lessons at very local levels that maybe aren't finding their way into lessons learned or into the plan. I'm the local guy. I did not have responsibility for responding to the BP disaster. I came into my job last summer, and by then the Coast Guard had pulled that response out of the day-to-day role of the sector commander and created another organization to do it. In fact, that's being organized right now out of New Orleans. Captain Julia Hine is running that, and Lieutenant Pat Coleman is in the back of the room. He's the branch director for the Florida branch for that continuing response. So I can't speak to what's happening today on the beaches of Escambia County or any of the counties, Santa Rosa County, okay? But what we can take from you all, or what did we learn in your experiences with this bill? Okay. And this is a vehicle for us to identify people that might know stuff, give folks a chance to be heard, and to maybe think of areas that we need to think about incorporating. Not to say all of it's going to wind up in the plan. The plan doesn't do everything, but there are points of conversation. Now, we recognize it's going to be very general stuff we're going to hear today. Actually making changes to the plan, which is a very complex document, takes a lot of work by people sitting around a table that can spend hours and hours on this kind of stuff, which is not what happens in a room like this, in a conversation like this. But we can get nuggets of information that we can go back and put people on and take a look at and make sure it's addressed in some way if we hadn't heard it already. Some of the things I've heard, this is our third meeting on this. We've been to Biloxi, we've been to Gulf Shores. A lot of folks want to make sure, I'll just say this out because this is already on our agenda. If you want to chime in on it, you can. People want to make sure that the use of dispersants is considered because of the unknowns regarding dispersants. I'll tell you right now, the use of dispersants with respect to an oil spill, it is still the jury is out issue. We are, in order for me in today's environment to employ dispersants to a spill, I would seek higher level authority. If the local responders decided this is the best strategy in the balance of goods and bads, maybe dispersants should be used. Really, I need to go up to the regional response team level at this point. The regional response team, which is chaired by EPA out of Atlanta and the Coast Guard out of New Orleans, my higher level boss, the EPA's higher level boss, are having intense discussions almost at every regional response team meeting to figure out what's the policy going to be on dispersants. At the time of the BP spill, the federal on-scene coordinators, people like me, had pre-authorization from the regional response team under certain circumstances to apply dispersants to a spill site if it was the best in consultation with the NOAA Scientific Support Coordinator, the state on-scene coordinator, the responsible party, and other folks who were participating, if it was considered to be the best strategy. That pre-authorization is tenuous at best, and in an abundance of caution, I wouldn't exercise it, and I would go up to the RRT. But that, we've got that. That's going to find its way. We do have an appendix that talks about dispersant use in the plan. It's one of the appendices. One of the issues that came up was safety of workers, making sure that's incorporated in. Another issue that came up was inclusion of local, county, city, towns somehow into the incident command and making sure that they maybe are better represented earlier on in an incident response. Roger. I was in California. I've been in the Coast Guard over 27 years now. My recent assignment was in California. We had a couple of decent-sized spills out there. One of them was a cargo ship that found its way right into the middle of the San Francisco-Oakland Bay Bridge, and we found that the communication out to local county stakeholders was just not good, and we keep learning that lesson, it seems. And so we've got to figure out a way to incorporate that into our plan. We do have contact information, but sometimes that's not enough. Anyway, those are some of the lessons. But happy to hear